Okay, we should be live. You're on mute, Mrs. Rizzo.
And I said all that already. Good evening. Welcome to the Revere Committee of the Whole meeting for April 20th, 2021. It is 5:17 p.m. Can we have a roll call, please?
Mrs. Bronston Rizzo. Oh,
Here.
you want to go, Doc, or you want me to do it?
Go ahead and do it.
Mr. D'Ambrosio,
Here.
Mr. Ferranti,
Here.
Ms. Gravellisi,
Here.
Mr. Sinella,
Present.
Ms. Ty,
Here.
Mayor Arrigo.
Okay, so the first thing on our agenda is our consent calendar.
Pledge of
Anyone have,
Allegiance.
pardon me?
Can we do the Pledge of Allegiance?
We're a committee of the whole.
Okay, I thought we started.
If you
our
want.
meetings. Go ahead. No,
If you-
never mind. Never mind.
Next meeting, we'll do that.
Okay, consent calendar. Any questions on the approval of minutes?
Move that the minutes be accepted as amended.
Second.
Anyone have questions on the warrants? Ms. Ty?
Yes, page 14, Michael, please. Do you want to go before me?
What's your question, Carol?
No. Number 498. Is Matt here?
Yes, he is.
Matt, I think I know what that is. It says cabling for immaculate. But I'm just wondering about what the extent of it was. I know that we had to share money with them. But what was the extent of the project on that?
The monies could have been used for anything to do with enabling remote learning at the school, with the hybrid or remote thing happening. So they would have been free as long as that amount was coming in under $10,000 for sound business practice, to do an upgrade of whatever they needed to get that working in their school over there. I can pull the exact purchase order and invoice.
No, not necessary. In other words, they could do what they wanted. We gave them the money to do it.
Right.
Is that correct?
Yeah, a portion of some of those funds was mandated to go to any private schools within the zip code
Right.
district. And so they've done it. They did some PPE stuff and they did some remote technology stuff.
And I'll just
Thank you.
add that they did have to follow the parameters of the grant. They couldn't
Yeah.
literally spend it on anything. But
Right.
as Matt pointed out, this was related to technology, this particular piece.
Right.
Thank you.
On Carol's question, I just want to piggyback. I know collaborative schools didn't receive any of these grant monies. So was it ever talked about, even though we did Immaculate, if we were going to do any collaborative schools that our students attend, like Shore Collaborative, they have 64 students. Was that talked about or maybe even thought about?
We were required by the state to provide funding to certain schools that educate Revere students. Among them were these private schools like Immaculate. Not among them were schools like Shore Collaborative. And even in the later ESSER grants, we're not required to do the same kind of disbursement. The state is doing that at the state level.
It's strange because Immaculate doesn't have necessarily Revere students, but we have students that attend SEAM and Shore Collaborative and other programs, and that's not
Right.
required. That's a
Yeah,
little
and there are
sad.
other, like even the private special education schools that our kids attend, we did not send funding to them either.
Yeah. Oh, well. Okay, I apologize. Michael, did you have questions?
Yeah, I do.
Thank you, Stacy. On page 1, Matt, Brain Pop LLC, could you just tell me what that is? And is that subscription cover the entire district, or is it for particular schools? 38.
Yep. So what I do know is that is an expense just at the level of the Wayland Elementary School. So that subscription would just be for what they were using it for. And it's
Okay.
coming out of an instructional services or materials line. What exactly Brain Pop does, I don't know off the top of my head. I don't know if anyone else is familiar with them in particular.
No. Danielle might know better than I do, but it's one of the online instructional programs that we use for remote learning.
Okay, I have my 12-year-old daughter here, and she told me it's just a ton of math video thingies.
There are also other videos.
Well, we're glad she was able to join us.
Can I give her a second?
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay,
Okay.
Matt, on page 3, number 100, Salt Lake Civil, and 101, City of Chelsea. The Salt Lake Civil was 15,000 services performed, and the City of Chelsea contracted services for 30,000 plus. Can you just tell me what they're for?
Sure, I can speak to City of Chelsea. Maybe Doc knows more of Salt Lake because that was doing some different kind of work, if I have that right. The City of Chelsea is managing the financing end of the 5DP, 5 district partnership. So each year they send us a single invoice that we pay for our proportion of the cost for that program. So that would have been the one-time payment that we make to Chelsea that funds not just the staff, but the services that go along with that. Does Salt Lake City ring a bell, Doc?
Yes,
Okay.
it's a 10, 90 minutes family liaison training. It's covered actually by the Nellie Mae Education Foundation grant that we have secured this year. And the goal is to train our family liaisons to become, true professionals for our school department. So that's what that money's for.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And Matt, just a general question. On the cleaning, I noticed there's like 2 bills. One I assume is the monthly bill, and the other one, they're short of money. What is the second one for?
Yep. So what we did on July 1st was we encumbered 2 different lines in the purchase order contracts to the cleaning company for each school. The first was the routine cleaning that would be done on a daily basis under normal circumstances. The second line was for additional work done to come in line with the COVID stuff we're trying to do. So we requested that they bill separately so that we can track the difference between ongoing cleaning and cleaning that was creditable to the COVID reality. So that's why you're seeing twice as many.
Okay.
It's not twice as much money, but it's twice as many transactions in my office to have a cleaner tracking. Because in 2 or 3 years, we're going to want to go back in time and say, what were our total costs for COVID related items? That's one way to help with that.
Okay. All right, Matt, on page 8, number 298, Amoresco, about 20,000 emergency testing and UV adjustment. Could you just tell us what that's for?
All right, page 8.
Page 8, 298.
Yep. So you can see a cluster of these payments to Amoresco. So those are projects that Carl would need them to do that fall outside of the scope of their ongoing maintenance of the stuff in the district. So that would have been something that Carl would have used Schedule C off of that contract to bring them in for that specific need that he had. I can pull 2021 5588 and get the specifics on that invoice. You're getting detail off the first line of that purchase order. So it would
Do
have
we
been,
know what school it pertains to?
we don't encumber the capital improvement or the big maintenance funds like that by school. So this is in a district-wide account.
Okay.
If I send the copy of the PO, you'll be able to see in the general notes section the specifics of the project and the location. So let me flag that one.
Okay, thank you. I'm all set. Thank you.
Okay.
And I
have
would
one-
think, Matt, if those were emergency testing, it might have been the HVAC testing that we did at the Beachmont, the Garfield, and the high school.
Thank you.
Anyone else have a question?
Ye-
Fred?
Yes, I don't know if this would be the place for it, but on the late communications, there were vouchers for payment from owner project management.
Left field?
Pardon me?
Left
But
field?
my question is, I mean, some of them are from November of 2000, and they're coming in late to be paid at this meeting. I mean, I don't know how a place stays in business, not billing, 4, 5, 6, 7 months away. And then from the November billing, have we encumbered that monies?
I can answer. So it's not unusual that on the front end of a project like this, there's a little bit of a delay in getting contracts that were agreed to move through the solicitor's office into the purchasing office, and then purchase order requisitions becoming purchase orders, and then the school committee getting around the bills that they need to vote in approval of them. It's not surprising that there would be some delay. Typically, it wouldn't be back to November, but this is the first set of bills being paid against the high school project. So it's not unusual that there would be a delay there. What you'll see now is on a monthly basis, you'll be approving the monthly invoice to the project manager, and we're just catching up for them having gotten started while waiting on some red tape to get crossed.
Well, the date is 11/20, 11/30 for $20,000.
Yep.
So you're saying that it's the purchasing department's problem, not their sending the bills timely?
The purchase order needs to be in place in order to pay those bills. They began work before receiving that pay,
Okay.
so they're just holding on to those invoices. And don't forget that in the expense of all of these dollars, there's a double approval that happens. The school building committee has to review and approve and recommend to you. And then what you're doing tonight is giving your green stamp so that I can push these through.
Okay, my question also was the November monies incumbent?
Yes, what we do is we encumber for the full amount of the feasibility study,
Okay.
and that purchase order is in place now. So we'll
Okay.
pass these bills through. Likely the same thing will be happening with the architects. I think
That's okay. That was 20,000 and March 1st to March 31st, 42,000. Okay, so that's a normal procedure then.
right. If
Okay,
because we want to encumber the funds and then pay them down as we go, sometimes there's a 60 to 90-day delay on the very front end of the project. Once we catch up, then everything should flow fine from there.
well, I was just wondering why it's a late communication. They could have sent it next month, but they want to be paid too. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yes,
Carol, did you have a question to follow up
Yeah.
on?
Yes, please. Not on a different topic. On page 1, 28 and 29, the unemployment. I was just wondering if this was an extraordinary amount that we spend on unemployment. Is this ordinary unemployment, or is this an increased sum of money due to the difficulty of the COVID epidemic?
Yes, the answer is B. This is a
Mhm.
much higher monthly cost
month.
than we're used to seeing. But
Right.
what we're doing is we're charging the unemployment account like we typically would so we can track it perfectly. And then we're reclassifying those expenses against coronavirus relief funds that are eligible for those purposes.
Uh-huh.
So we're not incurring the full amount of a crazy year of unemployment. It's
Uh-huh.
some of what we budgeted and some of what was written into the grants. So same thing
Thank you.
at the end of this year, we'll be able to say, here, X was our total cost for unemployment. Here's what we covered with our budget. Here's what was covered with the coronavirus relief funding.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Anyone else have any questions?
I want to clarify one thing, Matt. I'm having a flashback to Did we actually send money to Shore for each kid, $200 out of the ESSER grants?
We
Do you
we
recall
didn't
that?
we didn't do it out of the grant funding themselves. So I can double check it. If we did, it would have been out of a special education line, and it wasn't a lot of money. But
Yeah.
it's the difference with the private schools is there's a big dollar amount that they're requiring just go to them because they're there. With Shore Collaborative, Essex Aggie, some of these schools where we have a handful of students, there was a recommended per pupil amount for PPE
Mhm.
supplies and materials that could go to those schools. So
That's what I was just recalling, because I remembered the Essex Tech one, and that we
Yeah.
did do that. I want to say it was 200 per pupil.
we'd be talking about, I think it's $225 a student. So for somewhere like Essex Aggie, we're talking about $800 or $900. For sure, it would have been more like 6,000 or 7,000.
Mhm.
The amount to Immaculate out of the grant was a marked difference from that.
Okay.
Yep.
I just wanted to clarify that because I felt like when I said before, no, we didn't have to give it to them, that I was wrong on that.
Okay.
I can get the committee back up on that and on the Amoresco project.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Matt, for your help. Last call for any questions for Matt? So he can go do his brain pop with his daughter?
I apologize for all the noise, but we have 4 teenagers in my house. Well,
You know what?
12-year-old and-
You know what? It's a joyful noise.
It's the best.
Yeah.
It's the best, and go with it.
Mhm.
Okay.
Agreed. It is. Have fun.
Okay.
Okay, we have nothing under the financial reports. We have nothing under food service financials. Communications, do we have communication? Okay, an enrollment update. Any questions on the enrollment update?
Stacy,
Madam
one
Chair, I have oh, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead, Carol, go ahead.
It was very interesting to read about the numbers of kids. I actually thought there would be fewer. But I think it's great that so many people are back and have chosen to come back. And some of the classes, there are a lot in them. I looked at, we still have some classes on 30. We still have some on 28. And then on the other hand, we have some smaller classes too. But it was a very interesting total. And we're now back up. I think of at the high school, we have almost 2,000. And I think of when we opened that school, we had 24. I think we had 2,400. So
Kelly, I assume those numbers were remote and in-person learning, aren't they?
Yes, they do include
I
both
did
the
too,
in-person and the
yeah.
remote. Those are overall enrollment numbers.
Okay. I kept saying, wow, we have more students. Anyone else? Michael, you had a question on enrollment?
Yeah, thanks, Stacy.
No problem.
Diane, where the numbers look like they're down a couple 300 from last year to this year for, whatever, is that going to cost us funding this year?
So yes and no. It's definitely going to cost us funding because we have that many, like you said, I think it's actually about 260 fewer kids this year than we did last year. So our overall Chapter 70 funding is down as a result of that because it's based on our enrollment. However, with the funds that we have coming from the Student Opportunity Act and from ESSER 1, 2, and 3, we're still in a very stable financial environment. And what it means is that next year, when we anticipate a lot of those kids will return to us, especially the kindergarten and early childhood kids, which we estimate to be about 200 of those 250, we'll see that increase in enrollment next fiscal year and see an increase to our budget as a result of that, an increase to our Chapter 70 funding as a result of that. There is still talk at the state level, although it's lost a good deal of momentum, of calculating our fiscal 22 final budgets using our enrollment data from a year ago because they understand that there are over 30,000 kids across the Commonwealth who have fallen off of public school enrollment numbers, enrollment lists. I feel like that's lost some momentum at the state level. I don't know if Stacy has heard more on that through MASC. But in a way, I actually feel like it's better to delay until next year because that, you know, it'll be funding from next year that we can push further down the road if we need to and further secure our future once the ESSER funding goes away. Bless you, Fred.
Thank
Bless
you.
you. It was disappointing to hear that they weren't going to go back to the 2018 numbers. And then there is talk of the legislature trying to give us extra money somewhere, but that's not looking positive right about now. So I don't know. I know Senator Domenico has been working really hard on that, and he usually tries to give me updates here and there, but I haven't heard anything for over a week.
We did get the new funding, the new budget numbers from the House, which is up about $800,000 over where the governor had us. So that's a positive note
good.
as well. It still needs to be flushed through the Senate and then finalized before it's firm, but typically that doesn't decrease.
No,
Do they have a
that's
date
good.
on that, Diane, approximately, when that you think it'll be done, when it goes through the Senate?
It's typically, you know, around this time, maybe a little bit later into May. But usually by around the middle of May, we have a firm budget that we can proceed with. But it's all, everything so far is pointing positively in the direction of the plan that we gave to the school committee last week.
Yeah, I'm just reading it went into the Senate Ways and Means budget now, and they're discussing it. So it would be nice. Anyone else have questions on the enrollment update? Okay, anyone have questions on the personnel items? Michael?
Thanks, Stacy. Diane, if we hired all the custodians that we needed to hire, I know we had a gap of about 6 of them. Are they all hired by now, or are we still working on that?
We're still working on that. There is a posting out now for the Beachmont position. There were no internal candidates who bid for that. And I know that Dr. Napier and Carl are working on processing the outside applications that they got. And that, I believe, brings us to number 4 of 5. So we still have another position after that that we have to still fill. But, you know, we're kind of taking our time, knowing that even when we come back to in-person learning, the numbers of students that we'll have in buildings is still significantly lower than normal. So there's not the same level of demand, although we still certainly want to get up to 100% staffing.
Which building is that, Diane, that we're still looking to hire?
I believe that one is the additional position at the Wayland.
Okay.
I have to say, I was so excited to see all the health technicians put in place. And one of my favorite students of one of my favorite families in the whole wide world is working at the Hill School. And I can't wait to schools to be opened up again so I can go see her. But yeah, there's a few there that I kind of knew, and it's a great group of young ladies. So glad that's all taken care of. I'm sure the nurses are too. We have no donations. It's not a giving month, I guess, and definitely don't have any school field trips. So with that, are we all set for the consent calendar to be voted on the floor? And do we want anything taken off? So I'm going to say we can go to the floor with the whole, Carol?
As I look, I just had a question about the City of Revere early retirement incentive.
We didn't get to that one yet.
Oh, well, I thought you were just skipping ahead.
No, we're still on one. We still have 2, 3, and then that one.
Okay, well, they're on there, so we're on the other, the FAFSA then. Okay,
Okay, and FAFSA completion opportunity grant. Diane, you mentioned a little about it. Do you have more?
Yeah, so we did receive we applied for and received a grant. Diana Finn spearheaded that initiative. And she received a $15,000 grant from the governor's office to really try to help increase the number of kids who have completed their FAFSA forms, or the number of families, I should say, so that we can certainly encourage more families to, or more students to access college. And she is working with her team in putting some meetings together, some one-on-one guidance for families, and then some larger group forums in multiple languages to really try to reach families and help kids get the support they need to complete that form.
oh, congratulations to her,
Yep.
and thanks to all.
Mm-hmm.
I want to acknowledge that Mayor Brian Arrigo is here. Mayor, do you want to take over?
You can keep going. You're doing a great job, Stacy.
Oh, yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Okay, early literacy screen and assessment grant. I'm excited about this.
Yes, so this is another grant, and it was Brianna Supis who applied and received this one also from the governor's office. It's a total of $34,446. And that is going to be used to implement a new DIBELS testing. It's not new, we've used DIBELS before, but there was a training component for all teachers, which I think is completed at this point, or close to completed. No, Danielle's telling me I'm wrong. You can jump in, Danielle.
I was just gently shaking my head. We are scheduling it, and I believe it is happening next week and the week after.
So that'll be great. It's really going to help us take a picture of where kids are at this point in the school year, and that will hugely inform our summer programming and of course our programming next year as well, but really give us an entry point that's individualized for each student to see where they are and how we can support them going forward.
Very good. Then we have
I have a question.
what
on that,
Carol's been
please.
waiting for the City Revere Early Retirement Incentive. Diane, do you want to explain it?
No, before we go, I just have a question. Always on the DIBELS tests, you've had retired teachers going into different schools. And I was wondering if that was possible again this year, or if we had enough other people that we could use.
Do you want me to speak to that?
Yeah, Danielle can speak to it as well, but I know one of the things that we're really cognizant of this year, Carol, is not bringing people in.
Yeah, right.
So there's that piece, but there's also a piece about owning the data. And one of the things that we've observed over the last several years is when the teacher doesn't administer the assessment, and it's a brief assessment, but when the teacher doesn't administer it themselves, they lose a piece of that. Why did this child have this particular outcome? Why are these the scores? And so they end up looking at data, but they're, one of the things as a math teacher, I've always said, and, Michael and Anthony will, I'm sure, agree with this, being financial people, data absent context is meaningless. If you don't understand where the data is coming from, then you can't really attribute any causality or outcome from it. And that's one of the things that we've seen with the DIBELS is that the teachers really need to have that experience of meeting with the individual child and conducting the assessment so that they can have a true sense of what is causing a gap, if there is a gap, and what supports might help that child close whatever learning piece is missing. Danielle, you want to add to that?
No, that is exactly what the team of teachers. So a team of teachers worked with Brianna to apply for the grant. And that's part of it was that everybody would be trained so that everybody would be able to, as Diane said, own their data and be able to speak to it.
No, great idea. Thank you.
Okay, Dr. Kelly, information on the early retirement.
Yeah, so the city put out a notice to all employees that they were offering the same early retirement incentive that they did last spring, and seeing if anybody new was amenable to participating in that. It's a 20% salary increment. Well, not increment. I don't know what you call it, Brian. Like a bonus, maybe. And I wanted to ask the committee if that was something that you wanted me to pass on to our employees who are part of the city retirement system. It would not apply to teachers or administrators because we're all in the MTRS. But for those employees who are part of the city retirement system, I wanted to see if that's something that the committee wanted to maybe take a vote on the floor if that's something that you wanted to do.
Well, I think it's only fair that if most people in the retirement system for the city of Revere are getting it, I think that our employees, unless there's some compelling reason why we shouldn't do it for them, if there are people who wish, especially under a pandemic circumstance, to retire maybe before they had planned to, then I think it's a good idea to make that offer to everyone. And I think we'll be able to do that. The real question is, can we afford it? And I assume the answer to that is yes. And I don't think there'll be a lot of takers because we have much staff. Sorry. Okay.
That's all right. Fred, do you have a question?
Through you to the mayor, the positions that you've offered this to, are you planning on filling them or just having the assimilation of savings, that would warrant paying extra to have somebody go? But if the positions are going to be filled, what's the purpose?
Yeah, Mr. Sinella, that's a great question. And we're taking it on a case-by-case basis. So this is similar to the incentive program that we had put out there last year. And I think the committee remembers that. And I know folks took advantage of that last year as well. And what we've done is on a case-by-case basis, we'll look at the needs of a department. And I'll give an example. We have a couple of police officers and a couple of firefighters who have actually taken advantage of it this year, who are close enough to retirement that it made sense for them to maybe take advantage of the incentive. And my intention is going to be to fill those positions. I don't want fewer police or fire out on the street. And many times filling or backfilling a more senior person with a newer employee comes at some savings. So there is some savings even if we're backfilling the position. But we're taking that on a case-by-case basis, based on what the department needs are.
Okay. One other thing, when we were talking, the superintendent was hiring new people, and the figure was mentioned, $20,000 for medical. At one time, there used to be programs, I somehow remember the name cafeteria program, where an incentive was offered to someone whose significant other had access to medical insurance. And that 20 grand, if you well, we're up for negotiation with a lot of our people. Maybe that's something, Diane, that we may want to look at. You offer 5,000, you offer 7,000, you offer 10,000. I'm just figures, but there's a savings, spectacular savings right there, because it doesn't mean somebody has to retire. But out of all our employees, I'm sure that there would be some that would say, wow, that's a raise. So that, that's just a suggestion. But Brian, thank you for the information.
Yeah, and Mr. Sinella, just to that point, we've done that with health insurance, where we've offered employees, an amount of money if they either don't take our health insurance, or if they move off of our health insurance and go on to a spouse's, for example.
Okay,
We
that's what I
have done
referred to.
that. And I know that we've talked to each bargaining unit. We've done that through bargaining units, and it's definitely something to talk about in negotiations.
Okay, thank you.
Michael?
Okay, thank you. Mr. Mayor, is there a fixed amount, or is there a maximum amount that people can collect on the early incentive?
So the way that we, no, it'd be based on their salary, right? So the way that we did it was a percentage, and I don't know the numbers off the top of my head. I think it was 20%, but effectively that money was already budgeted for, right, in the city budget. So we're, in some sense, giving folks an advance payment on the budgeted amount that was, there for their individual salary. So we're essentially paying them out through the rest of the fiscal year, with the understanding that they'd be retiring. So the amount is just, there's no cap on a dollar figure. It's just based on what the employee makes in salary.
Right. And one last question. Do you really have an idea of how many people you think would take advantage of this? I know you mentioned just 4 people, 2 fire, 2 police. Anybody in City Hall might take advantage of it?
No, and we've had, I don't know the total number to date. We've had more than 4 people. We had a couple of people from police, a couple of people from fire. I know, I think 1 or 2 from DPW. So it's been sprinkled kind of throughout the city in terms of the number of people. I can get the committee a real number on how many people and what departments they're coming from.
Thank you.
And if you could, Mr. Mayor, could we have, for example, a copy of the notification that you put out to the employees?
Yep.
So that, thank you.
Brad, you have a question?
Yes, Brian, interesting point. Years ago, the state offered an incentive in the terms of 5 years that could be used in any way, either put it towards age or put it towards years of service. So what you're offering is just 20% of salary, not addition to age and or years of service?
No, we can't offer anything more than a monetary figure. We can't add years of service or years to their age to give them a more lucrative retirement.
Well,
we can't do it. The state has to do that. The state has to provide that.
I wanted that clarification so
Yep.
that people don't misunderstand. Well, my uncle did it 6 years ago when he added 2 to his age and 3 to years of service. Okay, so it's just a cash amount of monies.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
And there are some conversations at the state level about years of service, and one of them that's been talked about is that the year of COVID, or over a year now, but like that time working at as a public employee during COVID could be used for additional time, right? So that year could turn into up to 3. And that's something that the state legislature, I know, is discussing and contemplating. But
And
nothing
formal. It doesn't go towards their pension.
No, it would go towards their pension.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's something that's being talked about, but nothing final has come out.
Well, 'cause usually it's the 3 highest years of earnings that's accumulated. So this is not a bad deal.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Dr. Kelly, can you let us know about the Chapter 74 programming through MSBA?
Sure. I just want to have a chance to talk to the committee a little bit about this before the main meeting. We'll talk about it again there because we're going to ask you to take a vote, but it's a little counterintuitive to all of the conversation that we've been having about the new high school. One of the things that we have to do is engage in a 1.5 year educational plan study. And at this beginning stage, actually about 2 weeks from now, we have to submit documentation to the MSBA, identifying information about our current programming, and what we have decided on will be a practice and a policy going forward for the new building and what our educational plan for the new building will be. But right now, we don't have any Chapter 74 programming. A Chapter 74 program is a very specific thing defined by the Department of Education, and it's the kind of programs that you see at the Northeast Voc, at Essex Tech, at those VOTEC schools. Like, each of their programs has to be certified as a Chapter 74 program through the Department of Education. And so we're going to be asking you to take a vote tonight saying that we don't have any Chapter 74 programming, and right now today, our plan is not to have any. That doesn't mean that we're not going to have the career pathways that we've been talking about in our visioning sessions and in our discussions about the new high school. We still intend to have those, but they won't be state sanctioned Chapter 74 programs. And so I wanted to take a minute to talk to the school committee about that and see if there were any questions, and then we'll talk about it again, in the main meeting. But wanted to take a moment to discuss it here as well, if folks wanted to.
Well, do you have a suggestion as to the wording of the motion that you're looking for?
Yeah, and it might actually already be in there, is it not? Oh, no, it's not. Okay. So the
Maybe
wording
if you could
would
put it
just
in the
be that.
chat.
Sorry, go ahead, Stace.
If you could put it in the chat the way you feel it should be worded.
Okay.
I mean, you didn't have to do it right this second.
Well, this is going to be a different chat anyway than during the meeting, but
But I'm figuring someone can save it and read from it.
Right.
That'll be you, Anthony.
And the other thing that I want to say about this is, I mentioned this whole educational programming plan is going to take about 1.5 years before it's finalized. And there will be opportunities if we change our mind and decide that we do want to have some Chapter 74 programming, we can update it and include that. But the wording I was thinking would be appropriate. Let me hit enter on this so that goes there. That the school department submit the MSBA required paperwork indicating that Revere High School does not have or currently intend to begin any Chapter 74 programs.
Perfect.
Stacy,
Sounds
just
good.
say I'm perfect.
Yeah, take it where you get it, while you get it.
We all heard it.
Zip it, Susan.
And it's recorded as well.
I know. Okay, Anthony, did you save that chat?
I did.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and it's 6:01, so does anyone have any quick little questions or concerns about the agenda? Okay, seeing no hand up, Michael?
Yeah, Diane, where on the agenda that we have to vote for the motion that just was made?
It's actually not on there. I thought it was, but it will come under motions.
Okay.
No, new business.
Oh, new
No,
business.
motions, it's a motion.
Okay,
Well, you can have motions under new business or old business too. So
the motion.
doesn't make any difference to me.
Well, do you
Okay.
want to decide so under motions?
It
I
should be
should go on the
motion.
motion.
It's a motion.
Okay.
This is the only motion, yes. Don't
The-
see any.
It's not structured that way, but all of the late communications, all of those encumbrances, and then approval of the payments are motions as well.
Okay.
If you see those are on the second page of the agenda, Anthony. I don't know if,
Yep, I see them. Thanks.
okay. And I don't know,
Okay,
I know the way that we've done those in the past, if we're going to continue the same way, is that Mr. D'Ambrosio would read each one of those and then say so moved, so that he's making the motion and somebody else would second it. And then there'd be it would need to be a roll call for each one of them because they're over $10,000. Does that sound right?
Diane,
Yes.
he's
I
reading,
think-
he's just reading the communication as secretary. He's not making the motion. It still requires a maker of the motion and a second.
mhm.
Right, for the MSBA one, correct? I
Yes.
just remember Michael when he would read them and
Yeah.
he'd say, so moved. That was typically how we did it, but
And I believe
Correct.
when we
That's how
had,
it was when I was secretary as well.
okay, when we started doing the consent calendar, that was why we had all that in the calendar, so it wouldn't take up most of the meeting.
okay.
So we can look at what we used to do. Maybe we can pull up some minutes from when the Hill School was being done and see how we formatted that to go forward, seeing that we're going to be on a couple of years of this.
Mm-hmm, yeah, probably more than a couple.
Well,
Yeah.
Did he come from the building committee? Then we were just okay with the building committee did when the motion come from them?
not to
Building
pay the
committee,
bills.
Diane, and then we read on the, huh?
So
Not to pay
these
it.
bills,
That's
these encumbrances and approvals of payment were all already voted by the Revere High School Building Committee.
Okay.
And Susan and Stacy are both on that. They might be the right people. Like I remember, Michael, we used to refer questions to you or to Dan McGuire when he was here as members of the previous building committees. So we could, I would think that it would be a good idea to follow that same format, and we can, all of the members could ask Stacy or Susan if they had any questions.
Diane, to simplify it, why not check with Nick just to make sure that we're following proper procedure? I mean,
It is proper procedure. I know that. So the
Okay.
procedure is that the building committee has to approve them first, and then the school committee approves them. But how we actually want to do that process is, I'm just thinking if we talk about it now, then we'll all know exactly what our roles are when we get on the floor.
Yeah, I mean, if someone has a specific question on one of the encumbrances or payments, there's the mayor, Susan, myself, and Dr. Kelly that can answer it so that you're comfortable with your vote.
And honestly, that'll get more complicated as we move through the process. Like right now,
Right.
they're billing us for their services, which is conducting the meetings, for the OPM left field. Their earlier bills were for coordinating with the design team and getting that contract done, and coordinating with the mayor's office to get that contract done. But as we move through the process, these bills are going to get more complicated, and they're going to be for different kinds of things that don't seem as obvious. And that's when I think that the committee is going to have a lot of questions about, well, what is this piece over here for FF&E, and what's this piece over here for, I don't know, structural testing or whatever the case may be. There'll just be a lot more variety as we move into the project.
Fred?
Diane, so you're assuming that if the building committee approves it, that we should rubber stamp it?
I wouldn't use those words, but I will say that is, I think that's typically what the practice has been.
And it has.
It
And
is, yeah.
Fred, the mayor and myself and Stacy are on the committee, the building committee as well, so.
Okay, okay. I mean,
Okay,
because they themselves don't have the authority to do it. They can approve it, but it's still up to us to,
right,
okay.
Absolutely,
Right.
yeah, right.
Right.
Correct.
And we can ask questions and you don't have to vote for it if you
Yeah.
don't think it's
Right,
proper.
that's what Dr. Kelly just said, that you could ask either myself or Mayor Arrigo or Stacy, because we're on the committee, the building committee as well.
Yeah, I realize that.
okay, with that being said, we're going to need a motion to adjourn, and maybe, it's 6:08. And we need to get to the other link.
Do we
So
have
it's-
another link?
Yeah, oh, God.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
Second.
See
Okay.
everybody in a minute.
Okay,
Um,
see you on the other, can we
yeah.
take a 2-minute break?
Yes,
And
please,
go to the other link? Okay.
please.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yes.